My name is Margaret Lawson. I am 62 years old, a widow, and for most of my life, I was known only as someone's wife or someone's mother. People saw me as the quiet woman in the background, holding everything together while the spotlight always shone on others. I used to work 3 shifts just to pay the bills, and when my husband passed away 10 years ago, I carried the entire weight of our family on my shoulders. No one ever asked how I managed, because I never complained. I kept moving forward in silence. And yet, nothing in all those years prepared me for the moment when my own daughter looked at me, smirked, and said words that cut deeper than any knife. "It's only 40 guests, Mom." Just put it on your card. I had already written a check for $60,000 to secure her 5-star hotel gala. $60,000 for one night of glitter, champagne, and appearances. She said it like it was nothing, as if my life sacrifices were no more than numbers printed on a piece of plastic. I smiled, but inside I felt a storm rising. When the night of her gala arrived, Diana stepped out of the limousine in her silk gown, her fiancé Victor beside her, and their friends trailing behind, laughing and taking pictures. She swept into the hotel with the pride of a queen entering her castle. But when she pushed open the grand ballroom doors, what met her eyes was not the glow of chandeliers or the clinking of glasses. It was silence. The room was empty. No music, no flowers, no polished silverware laid out across white linen tables. Just 4 walls and bare floors. Her jaw dropped. For a second, she thought it was some cruel mistake, that the staff had prepared the wrong ballroom. She spun toward me, her eyes sharp, her voice rising. "Mom, what did you do? Why is this room empty? Did you forget to pay?" I did not answer her anger with anger. I did not rush to explain. Instead, I reached into my small clutch bag and pulled out a golden key. It caught the light from the hallway and shimmered between my fingers. I placed it gently on the table by the door, the sound echoing in the hollow space. That key was more than metal. It was my anchor, a symbol of everything I had built, everything she had taken for granted. Her voice shook as she demanded again, "Tell me you paid. Tell me this isn't happening." I looked at her, and in the calmest tone I had ever spoken to her, I said, "Respect is not negotiable." The guests murmured, whispering in confusion. Victor shifted uncomfortably, his perfect image unraveling as cameras hovered at the door. I could see Diana's face drain of color, as if the world she had carefully crafted for herself was beginning to crack. And in that moment, I felt no triumph, only a steady truth settling in my bones. For years, I had been treated like a servant in my own family. For years, I had been invisible. But tonight, for the first time, she would see me. I did not need to shout. I did not need to humiliate her in return. The empty room spoke louder than anything I could say. The golden key gleamed between us, and although she did not understand it yet, she soon would. The real surprise was still to come, because Diana did not know that the very hotel she had chosen to showcase her importance, the same marble halls she paraded through as if they belonged to her, had been mine all along. She did not know that behind the quiet face she dismissed lived the woman who owned every chandelier and every stone of that 5-star property. I had kept that truth locked away, waiting for the moment when silence would be my strongest weapon. Tonight, my silence filled the ballroom more completely than any orchestra ever could. I watched her standing there, trembling, not because the gala had failed, but because her illusion of power had collapsed. She wanted me to be her servant. She wanted my money, my labor, my silence. But she never wanted me as her mother. And yet, as I stood in that bare room, I realized that this was not only about her disrespect. It was about me finally refusing to live unseen. For the first time, I was not just a shadow at the edge of her story. I was the one holding the key. This is where my story begins. After that night in the empty ballroom, memories came rushing back to me like an old film reel I could not pause. I saw the younger version of myself, apron tied too tight around my waist, hurrying between shifts. In those days, I was not invisible. I was a wife, and later, a mother who believed every sacrifice had meaning. When Richard was alive, I built my world around him and our daughter. I let my own dreams fold quietly into the corners of our life. I wanted to write, maybe even finish college. But instead, I worked nights cleaning offices so Richard could pursue his career. I smiled when he called me his steady rock. And when Diana was born, I doubled the effort. Every meal, every clean shirt, every lullaby. Those were the bricks I used to build our home. But when Richard passed, all the weight shifted onto me. I told myself it was worth it, that my daughter would never feel the kind of hunger I had known as a child. I picked up extra jobs, stood in supermarket aisles counting coins, and still managed to pack her lunches with little notes tucked inside. "You're my star," I used to write, hoping she would carry those words with her. Somewhere between childhood and adulthood, though, something changed. The little girl who once hugged my legs in the grocery store began to look past me, as if I were part of the furniture. At first, it was subtle. A sigh when I asked how her day went. A rolled eye when I offered advice. Then, one Thanksgiving, she crossed a line I could never forget. The house was warm with the smell of turkey and cinnamon pies. I had cooked since sunrise, my hands raw from peeling and scrubbing. Family gathered around the long table, laughter filling the air. Diana walked in late, wrapped in a designer coat. She glanced around, then looked straight at me with a smirk. "Look at our staff working so hard," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room went quiet for a beat, then filled with awkward chuckles. They thought it was a joke. I forced a smile, even laughed softly to keep the peace, and went back to carving the turkey. But inside, something cracked. Staff, not mother, not Margaret, not even mom, just staff. From then on, the word stuck. At birthdays, she would call across the table, "Staff, bring the drinks." At Christmas, she would laugh, "Our family comes with free service." Each time, I swallowed the sting, telling myself it was just her way of showing off. But at night, when the dishes were washed and the house fell silent, I stood by the sink and whispered to myself, "When did I become a servant in my own home?" I tried to remember the exact moment. Was it when I gave up my career to raise her? Was it when I said yes to every demand, believing that love meant sacrifice? Or was it the day I chose silence, thinking it would protect the fragile thread of family we still had left? The truth is, it didn't happen all at once. It happened piece by piece, meal by meal, check by check. I gave, and she took, until the roles blurred. I was no longer the mother who raised her, but the staff who served her. What hurt most was not only her words, but the way others accepted them. They smiled, they laughed, they clinked their glasses. Not one person ever said, "That's your mother." Respect slipped away, not with a scream, but with silence. I carried that silence for years. At first, it felt like armor, keeping the peace. But eventually, it became a cage. I moved around the house, quiet and efficient, unseen except for what I could provide. My presence was measured in chores done and checks signed, not in love or dignity. And yet, deep inside, a question refused to die. When did I stop being her mother? When did I become the staff? That question haunted me every time she raised her glass to toast herself. Every time she waved me off, like hired help. It was there, buried, but alive, waiting for the moment when silence would no longer protect her, but protect me. I did not know then that the answer would reveal itself the night she demanded $60,000 for her gala. That was when I finally stopped being invisible. That was when the staff became the one holding the key. The morning after that Thanksgiving, I remember standing in the kitchen, staring at the dented old kettle on the stove. Its handle had loosened over the years, but it still worked. Much like me, I thought. That was when Diana called, her voice sharp with excitement. "Mom, I've decided. The gala will be at the Grand Sterling Hotel. 5 stars, breathtaking chandeliers, the perfect place for me to shine." She didn't pause before adding, "It's only 40 guests. You'll cover it, right? Just put it on your card." I froze. My fingers tightened around the phone, and for a second, I thought I might drop it. $60,000. That was the deposit alone. My throat went dry, but before I could form words, she pressed on. "Don't stress. I'll take care of the image, the people, the press. You only need to handle the money. That's your role, Mom." Her words landed like blows. "That's your role, Mom. Not mother, not family, but financier." I whispered, "Diana, 60,000 is..." She cut me off. "Don't start. It's not a big deal for someone like you. Besides, you want me to succeed, don't you? This is about our family's reputation. I'll make us proud." You'll see. I stood in silence, listening to the tone in her voice, the same tone she used when she ordered coffee at expensive cafes. Entitled, certain, as though my sacrifice was nothing more than her birthright. "Just pay, Mom," she finished, almost dismissively. "Leave the rest to me. That's all I need from you." Then she hung up, leaving me staring at my reflection in the kitchen window. I saw a tired woman with graying hair pulled into a bun, still wearing an apron spotted with flour. And in that reflection, I asked myself, when did I become the wallet instead of the mother? I swallowed hard, refusing to let the tears fall. Instead, I picked up my keys, drove to the bank, and arranged the transfer. My hands shook as I signed the paperwork, not from lack of funds, but from something deeper. A wound that no balance could heal. As I drove home, memories pressed against me like ghosts. I saw Diana as a little girl again, her small hand curled around mine as we walked through the supermarket aisles. We didn't have much then. Sometimes I had to put back a box of cereal to afford milk. But she didn't notice the sacrifices. She looked up at me with wide eyes and whispered, "Mom, you're my hero." Those words had carried me through nights of exhaustion, through double shifts and empty bank accounts. They were my anchor, proof that all my sacrifices meant something. And now, years later, the same child who once called me a hero had reduced me to nothing more than a staff member with a credit card. I pulled the car over, unable to breathe. My chest ached as though her words had carved out the very core of me. I remembered the softness in her voice as a child, the way she would tuck her head under my chin and sigh in contentment. That tenderness had been replaced by demands, deadlines, and disdain. In that moment, I wanted to scream, to tell her that respect was not negotiable, that love could not be measured in dollars. But the scream never came. Instead, I pressed my hand against the steering wheel and let the silence settle inside me. Because silence had always been my shield. When I arrived home, I placed the receipt carefully in my desk drawer. My eyes lingered on it, the black ink spelling out more than just numbers. It spelled out years of unacknowledged sacrifice. It spelled out the distance between the mother I had been and the servant she believed I was now. I told myself I would not forget this moment. Every word she had spoken, every careless demand, I etched into my memory, because something deep inside me whispered that there would come a day when this silence would no longer protect her, but reveal her. For now, I remained the quiet provider, the invisible staff, but in the back of my mind, the image of that little girl in the supermarket clung to me. The girl who once said, "Mom, you're my hero." I wondered if she would ever see me that way again. People often assumed I lived modestly because I had no choice. They saw the worn cardigans, the old sedan parked in my driveway, and the way I clipped coupons at the grocery store. Even Diana believed it. She looked at me and saw someone scraping by, someone who should be grateful just to stand near the wealth and brightness of her world. But here is the truth no one ever suspected. I am the woman who built the Lawson Grand hotels. It began years ago, when Richard was still alive. While he worked as an assistant manager in a local inn, I was the one who saw potential in neglected properties others overlooked. I borrowed small amounts, saved every extra dollar from my cleaning jobs, and studied the business in quiet hours after Diana had gone to bed. I signed the first deed with trembling hands, but within a year, that shabby roadside inn turned a profit. One property became two became five, and slowly, brick by brick, I built a chain worth $60 million. No one knew because I wanted it that way. Richard never understood the scope of what I was doing. He thought I was dabbling, and when he died, I made the decision to keep it hidden from Diana. She was still in college then, impressionable, hungry for status. I didn't want her to grow up entitled, believing money solved every problem. I wanted her to value effort, to know the dignity of work. So I kept my role hidden behind layers of legal protection. To the world, the Lawson Grand Hotels were a faceless corporation. To Diana, I was just the mother with tired hands and a small pension. The only person who ever knew the full story was Evelyn Tran, my lawyer and confidant for over 30 years. Evelyn was sharp-eyed, with hair the color of silver threads, and a voice that carried both authority and kindness. She had watched me sign contracts and negotiate with investors. She had seen me walk into boardrooms where men twice my age dismissed me, only to leave humbled by my quiet precision. "You are the kind of woman people underestimate," Evelyn told me once, sliding a stack of papers across her mahogany desk. "And that is your greatest advantage." I smiled then, grateful for her. Evelyn was not only my lawyer, but my mirror, reflecting back the strength I often forgot I had. She reminded me that caution was not weakness, that privacy was power. So while Diana called me staff, while she rolled her eyes at my coupons and mocked my thrift, I held the keys to a fortune she could not imagine. The irony was cruel, almost comical. She demanded I pay $60,000 for her gala at one of my own hotels, without ever realizing she was speaking to the woman who owned the very ballroom she longed to fill. Sometimes, late at night, I would take out the small gold key Evelyn had given me as a keepsake. It wasn't to a house or a vault. It was symbolic. She said, "This is your anchor. Whenever you doubt yourself, remember, you hold the key. I kept it in my desk drawer. And on nights when Diana's words cut deep, I would run my fingers over its cool surface. There was comfort in knowing the truth lived in silence. Comfort, and also sorrow. Because what good was building an empire if your own child couldn't see you beyond a checkbook? Yet I reminded myself, I had chosen this. I had chosen to let her think I was ordinary, maybe even poor, because I believed humility would teach her more than money ever could. I thought protecting her from privilege would give her strength. But somewhere, I failed. Instead of humility, she learned entitlement. Instead of respect, she learned disdain. and I carried the weight of that failure like a stone in my chest. Still, Evelyn reassured me, you planted seeds she cannot yet see. Life has a way of revealing the truth at the right moment. Be patient. So I waited, silent as always. I let Diana believe she was above me, while I signed documents worth millions behind closed doors. I let her call me staff, while I held the title of owner. I paid her bills without complaint, while my signature quietly expanded an empire. But deep down, I knew a reckoning was coming. Because silence may hide the truth for a season, but it does not erase it. One day, Diana would walk into a room and discover who her mother really was. And on that day, the world she thought she controlled would collapse around her. Until then, I held my silence close, my gold key tucked away, and Evelyn's words echoing in my mind. Respect is not negotiable. I hosted dinner on a Thursday because Thursdays feel honest. The week has lost its shine, yet the weekend has not begun to pretend. I set the table with plain white plates, the same ones I have used for years, and folded linen napkins around the silver handkerchief my mother left me. It is thin with age. I keep it close when I need steadiness. The roast rested under foil. The vegetables steamed. The kettle clicked off like a small heartbeat in the kitchen. Diana arrived first, perfume forward, phone in her hand like a second face. Her fiancé, Victor Hale, followed with the confidence of a man who walks into rooms expecting the chair at the head of the table. He is handsome in a careful way. The jawline, the tailored jacket, the watch that catches the light a half second before his smile. Smells great, Victor said, scanning the room rather than the food. Home cooking is a lost art. I poured water. He did not notice that I chose stemware for him and a simple glass for myself. Diana sat, crossed her legs, and started listing the week's demands. The florist needed a deposit. The photographer wanted an upgraded package. The hotel coordinator required confirmation. She recited costs like a weather forecast. When she reached the number for the gala again, she barely paused. "It is only 40 guests," she said, glancing at Victor. "We will keep it intimate. Tasteful." The press likes tasteful. Victor speared a carrot and said casually, "We will inherit anyway, so none of this is a real problem." He smiled at me with practiced warmth. "You should not worry, Mrs. Lawson. Diana and I will take good care of what you leave." The fork in my hand felt heavy. I set it down, smoothing the handkerchief beneath the table. Its cool thread calmed my pulse. Diana laughed, not cruelly, just carelessly. "Victor is teasing, Mom. He means we are investing in the family image. You just handle the bills. We will handle the narrative, handle the bills. Handle the narrative. 2 jobs, only one counted as love." I studied their faces. Beauty and ambition sat across from me. They were young enough to believe that life always opens the door when you press harder. I served the roast. The knife traveled clean through the meat. Victor watched my hands. "Efficient," he said. "You must have done this 1,000 times." I have, I thought, carving dinners, carving budgets, carving pieces of myself to fit into other people's plates. Out loud, I said, "Eat while it is hot." They did, praising the glaze and critiquing the lighting in the dining room for future photos. Victor talked about a client who measured value only by visibility. He admired the man. "People respect what they can see," he said. "We will make sure they see Diana." I remembered a different Diana, the one whose sneakers squeaked on supermarket tile as she gripped my fingers and called me her hero. That child had trusted my invisible work. This woman required spectacle. I tasted salt at the back of my throat and reached for water. "About the hotel," Diana began, her tone light but pointed. "The coordinator said there is a narrow window to confirm the ballroom. It is the most photographed space. We cannot risk losing it. You already paid the deposit. We just need the balance. I will send the invoice tonight. Victor leaned back, lacing his fingers behind his head like a man in a commercial. Think of it as positioning. Legacy needs staging. The world does not hand out respect without a show. Respect. The word pressed against my ribs. I folded the handkerchief twice, then unfolded it. The motion small, deliberate. My silence stretched between us like a table runner no one noticed. Diana broke it with a quick smile. Mom, do not look so serious. You always worry about numbers. Let us worry about image. That is our generation's strength. I wanted to say that image without character is a costume. I wanted to ask when she stopped valuing the hands that built her life. Instead, I poured more gravy and listened to the clock tick in the hallway. It sounded like a metronome keeping time for a song none of us were singing. Victor complimented the wine, and then, as if sharing a kindness, added, You know, there is no rush to update your will, but when you do, a clean structure prevents confusion. I can introduce a firm that specializes in transitions. It would spare Diana unnecessary stress. Diana nodded eagerly. Yes, the sooner we formalize, the better. People make assumptions when paperwork lags paperwork. Assumptions, inheritance, words arranged like furniture, comfortable for them, suffocating for me. I looked at my daughter's face, lit by the soft lamp I had bought when she was 12. She used to read under that light while I folded laundry. Now she used it to angle pictures for likes. The moral question rose like steam from the roast. It blurred my vision. Do I tell them the truth and watch the scaffolding of their certainty buckle? Or do I let them live inside their illusion a little longer and hope adulthood will teach what money has hidden? I could end the conversation with one sentence. I could put the key on the table and watch their eyes learn respect. But I did not. Not yet. I wiped my fingers on the handkerchief, then placed it in my lap again, its silver thread catching a seam of light. Eat, I said softly. You will need your strength for the week ahead. They took it as approval. Diana relaxed. Victor raised his glass. The conversation flowed back to vendors and angles and placements. I nodded at the right moments. I refilled plates. I memorized every word. When the dishes were cleared and they stood to leave, Victor shook my hand with both of his, a gesture that mimicked intimacy. We are lucky to have you, he said. Diana kissed the air near my cheek. You always come through, Mom. That is what I love about you. The door closed behind them. The house exhaled. I stood in the quiet, the handkerchief warm in my palm, and let the moral weight settle. The truth waited in the next room like a sealed envelope. I could open it whenever I chose. For tonight, I folded the linen, placed it beside the sink, and asked the question that would not let me sleep. Should I tell them who I am, or let them meet the truth the hard way? It was 2 nights after that family dinner when Diana came to see me. She did not ask if it was a good time. She never did. She simply walked into the living room, the sharp click of her heels echoing against the wooden floor, and dropped her purse on the couch as if she owned the place. Mom, she began, her tone sweet but rehearsed. I need to finalize the gala arrangements. It's only 40 guests, $60,000. With you, that's nothing. Her words slid across the air like glass shattering. $60,000. With you, that's nothing. I sat still in my chair, my hands folded over the silver handkerchief in my lap, and for a moment, it felt as though someone had gripped my chest and squeezed. My breath caught, shallow and thin, as if the very walls had closed in on me. She continued, oblivious. This gala is important, Mom. It's about my image, our family's image. Victor says appearances are everything. He's right. We can't cut corners. You'll cover it, like always. I'll handle everything else. I nodded slowly, my face unreadable. Inside, however, a storm pressed against my ribs. I thought of all the times I had stood in line at the bank, counting pennies for her school supplies. I thought of the nights I walked home in the rain because I didn't have bus fare after paying her recital fees. And now she stood in my living room and reduced $60,000 to nothing. I'll need the transfer by tomorrow, she added, scrolling through her phone. The hotel won't hold the space otherwise. It's the Grand Sterling, the best ballroom in the city. Perfect lighting, perfect ceilings, perfect everything. My gaze sharpened, though my head still moved in agreement. She didn't notice. She never did. I'll send you the invoice tonight, she said. It's just business. You know how it is. We need to present ourselves properly. People expect it. Victor says it's all about leverage. He's right. This is how the world works now. I let her speak, her voice a steady stream of entitlement, while I studied the way her hair framed her face. The same hair I once brushed back from fevered cheeks when she was a child. I remembered her small hand gripping mine in the supermarket aisle, whispering, "Mom, you're my hero." Now that same voice, older, colder, called me nothing more than a checkbook. "I know you don't like spending," she said lightly, "but come on, Mom. Don't be dramatic. It's just money, and with you, it's no problem." The irony almost made me laugh. With me, it's no problem. She had no idea that she was asking me to pay for a ballroom I already owned, that her words, meant to diminish, were actually affirming my hidden strength. I felt the weight of the gold key in the drawer upstairs, the anchor Evelyn had given me, the symbol of everything Diana did not know. My silence stretched, long and deliberate. She shifted slightly, glancing at me, perhaps expecting protest, but I offered none. Only a measured nod, my lips pressed into a line that did not betray the fire gathering behind them. "All right," I said softly, "if that's what you want." She exhaled in relief, smiling. "I knew you'd understand. You always come through. That's what makes you such a great mom." She leaned down, kissed the air near my cheek, and grabbed her purse. "I'll text you the details." "Thanks, Mom. You're the best." The door closed behind her, and the silence returned like a tide. I sat there, the handkerchief clenched between my fingers, my pulse steadying. My eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in clarity. For years, I had played the role she cast me in: provider, servant, invisible staff. But roles can be rewritten. Her words, $60,000, with you that's nothing, did not diminish me. They sharpened me. They reminded me of who I was, of what I had built in silence. She thought she held the stage, but I held the foundation beneath it. And in that moment, I knew the time for silence was nearing its end. The Grand Sterling Hotel glowed like a jewel that morning. Crystal chandeliers hung in the lobby, casting light that rippled across polished marble floors. Staff hurried about with clipboards, radios crackling, voices lowered in deference to the occasion. Diana had chosen the venue for its prestige, for the way the cameras would catch her descending the staircase like a queen. She had no idea that the crown already belonged to me. "Good morning, Madam Lawson," one of the coordinators said with a polite bow as I entered. The words landed with quiet weight. Madam Lawson. My true name, my true place, spoken without hesitation. Diana was beside me, distracted, scrolling through her phone. She assumed the greeting was a standard courtesy, like calling someone ma'am. To her, I was nothing more than the one signing checks. She didn't notice the deliberate respect, the way staff glanced at me with recognition. "This is going to be perfect," she murmured, tapping her screen. The flowers, the lighting, the guest list. It's all coming together. You'll love it, Mom. Well, you'll love that it's handled. I nodded, letting her believe her illusion. My silence gave her confidence. Her confidence gave me time. We walked down the gilded hallway, the air scented faintly of lilies. My heels clicked against marble, each step pulling me deeper into memory. Once, these halls had felt impossibly grand, a world I could only enter through the side door. I remembered pushing a cart stacked with towels, the smell of bleach seeping into my skin, the ache in my back from bending over sheets that were never smooth enough. Now, I walked the same hallway, not as staff, but as owner. The pivot pressed against my chest, and I slowed. My hand reached out, fingertips brushing the cool surface of the marble wall. It was smooth, veined with gray and gold. Once, these stones had been my enemy, mocking me with their elegance as I scrubbed stains from the baseboards. Now they held my reflection, and for the first time, I saw myself as I truly was. Not the servant Diana named me, but the woman who had built this place from the ground up. I let my palm rest there a moment longer, feeling the shift inside me. From the calloused hands of a maid to the steady grip of an owner, from invisibility to undeniable presence. The marble did not care, but I cared. This wall had seen me bend low. Today, it saw me stand tall. "Mom, are you listening?" Diana's voice cut in, sharp with impatience. She had walked ahead, her heels tapping faster, her reflection stretching across the glossy floor. "The coordinator needs your confirmation on the menu. Just sign whatever they give you." It's standard, I followed, my steps slower, more deliberate. Every detail around me, the brass railings, the velvet drapes, the hush of voices, was a reminder of the path I had walked. Not a path of glamour, but of grit. Not of shortcuts, but of nights spent balancing accounts while Diana slept soundly in her bed. I remembered one night long ago, standing in this very lobby, my uniform damp from rain. A manager had scolded me for being late, his words sharp, his finger pointing at the streak of water I'd left on the floor. I had bitten my tongue, apologized, and bent to mop it up. That humiliation burned in me for years, fueling each decision, each investment. And now I owned the building where that man once stood. The coordinator approached, smiling. "Everything is ready, Madam Lawson. Your signature will complete the final arrangements I signed with steady hands, my name flowing across the page like a quiet declaration." Diana glanced over, uninterested, and slipped the paper back to the coordinator without looking at it. To her, it was just another bill. To me, it was sovereignty. As we moved on, I let my eyes linger on the ballroom doors. Behind them, chandeliers waited to light her stage. But I knew whose stage it truly was. I could feel Evelyn's words echo in my mind. Respect is not negotiable. I tucked the silver handkerchief in my pocket, smoothed the marble wall once more, and let the silence cloak me. Diana believed she held the spotlight. She didn't see that I had been holding the power all along. The ballroom glittered as preparations reached their peak. Staff rushed in and out with trays of crystal glasses, floral arrangements taller than a man, and silver cutlery polished to perfection. Diana stood in the center, chin lifted, watching the room come alive as if she had created it herself. I lingered by the doorway, unnoticed, my silver handkerchief folded neatly in my palm. She turned when she spotted me, a smirk curling her lips. "Mom, I'll be busy with the VIP guests tonight," she said, her tone cool and practiced. "You just make sure everything behind the scenes runs smoothly. That's your specialty anyway, keeping things in order while I shine." Her words stung sharper than I let show. Busy with VIP guests, stand behind the scenes. I wanted to ask if she remembered the nights I stayed awake sewing her costumes, The mornings I walked miles so she could ride the bus. But she didn't pause long enough for an answer. Victor arrived, his hand sliding easily around her waist. He looked at me as though I were a piece of furniture out of place. "Listen, Mrs. Lawson," he said with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Diana has worked hard to cultivate this image. Tonight is critical. Don't embarrass her. Don't make her look bad in front of people who matter. Don't embarrass her. Don't make her look bad." I felt my pulse slow, heavy, and deliberate. The handkerchief in my hand grew warm, the silver thread pressing into my skin. I breathed deeply, holding my silence the way one holds a blade, hidden, sharp, waiting. "Of course," I replied softly. It was all they expected of me, obedience wrapped in quiet words. Diana kissed Victor's cheek, her eyes gleaming. "See, she understands. Mom has always been reliable. She may not look like much, but she knows her place." Her voice echoed in the cavernous room, louder than she realized. A few staff members paused, their eyes flickering between us, uncertain. I felt the heat of shame rise, not for myself, but for her. For the daughter who could so easily slice dignity from her own mother and call it humor. I turned my gaze away, focusing on the chandeliers. Their crystals trembled in the draft, catching light and scattering it across the walls. I thought of all the hours I once spent beneath lights like these, scrubbing scuff marks from floors, invisible to the very guests who marveled at the room's beauty. Now, my own child made me invisible. The question whispered through me, louder than the music rehearsing in the background. When your own child sees you as a burden, where does a mother go? I wanted to flee, to walk out into the night and never return. But my steps rooted to the marble floor, the weight of decades holding me in place. I remembered her small voice in the supermarket aisles, calling me her hero. That memory fought against the present like two halves of a torn photograph. Victor's voice pulled me back. "Really, Mrs. Lawson, it's simple. Just stay out of the way. Tonight is about Diana and her rise. Nobody needs the distraction of sentiment. That was what he called me. A distraction." I studied his face, the ambition carved into every angle, the hunger for wealth gleaming just beneath the surface. He thought I was powerless, a relic who signed checks out of obligation. He didn't know he was standing on a floor I owned, beneath chandeliers I purchased, in a hall I built with my silence. But I said nothing. Silence had always been my sharpest weapon. Diana brushed her gown, adjusted her hair, and gave me one last glance before turning away. "Don't worry, Mom. You don't need to be seen tonight. Just make sure everything goes perfectly. That's what you're good at." She didn't see how my eyes narrowed, how the air around me seemed to shift. She didn't hear the steady drum of resolve in my chest. She only saw the mother she believed she had reduced to staff. I walked slowly along, the edge of the room, my fingers brushing the marble columns, the velvet curtains, the polished banisters. Every inch of this place whispered my story back to me, from scrub brush to signature, from maid's uniform to owner's key. The disdain in their voices hurt, but it also clarified. The moment of reversal was drawing close, and they would never see it coming. For now, I let their words settle, unchallenged. I folded the handkerchief once more, pressed it to my lips like a vow, and answered the question only in silence. When your own child calls you a burden, a mother must decide whether to remain unseen or to remind the world who she truly is. The night of the gala arrived with the sound of high heels clicking across marble and laughter spilling through the corridors of the Grand Sterling Hotel. Perfume hung in the air like mist, mingling with the scent of fresh lilies and polished silver. Guests arrived in shimmering gowns and tailored suits, their voices overlapping in a chorus of anticipation. Diana led the procession, radiant in silk, her hair swept back, diamonds catching the chandelier light. Victor walked proudly beside her, his hand on her back, smiling for every camera that turned their way. I followed a few paces behind, silent, unseen, the silver handkerchief folded neatly in my palm. She reached the grand ballroom doors, her chin high, her smirk rehearsed. With one graceful push, she flung them open, ready to bask in applause. But silence greeted her. The room was empty. No tables dressed in white linen, no crystal glasses catching the light, no orchestra tuning instruments, just vast marble floors stretching into stillness, the chandeliers dim, the air echoing with nothing at all. Gasps rippled through the guests. A few exchanged awkward glances. Cameras lowered, puzzled. Diana froze in the doorway, her face draining of color, then flushing crimson. This can't be right," she stammered, her voice breaking. She turned to Victor, who stood wide-eyed, then back at me. Her voice sharpened into a shriek. "Mother! What have you done?" I stepped forward slowly, my heels steady against the silence. I did not raise my voice. I did not defend myself. Instead, I reached into my small clutch and drew out the golden key. The metal caught the low light, gleaming like fire in the dim room. I placed it gently on the table nearest the door. The sound of it striking the wood echoed louder than her scream. The ballroom held its breath. Diana's chest heaved as she pointed at me, her voice trembling with fury and humiliation. "You ruined everything. Do you know how important tonight is? All the work, all the image. I told you just to handle the money. Why would you sabotage me like this?" Victor tried to steady her, whispering, "Calm down. People are watching." But his eyes flickered nervously between me and the key. I said nothing. The silence was my reply. The silence carried the weight of years, of every meal cooked without thanks, every insult disguised as a joke, every dollar dismissed as nothing. I did not need words. The golden key spoke for me. Diana's hands trembled as she looked around, desperate for an ally, desperate for someone to tell her this was a mistake, that the tables were simply late, that the orchestra was warming up elsewhere. But the truth was undeniable. The room was empty because I had chosen it to be. Her voice cracked, louder now. "Answer me. Tell me why you did this." Still, I did not speak. Instead, I folded my handkerchief, placed it carefully on the edge of the same table, and let my eyes meet hers. My gaze was calm, steady, unflinching. For the first time in years, she could not look away. Behind her, whispers spread among the guests. What's happening? Was the event canceled? Did she forget to pay? The shame she feared so much wrapped itself around her like a heavy cloak. Victor pulled at her arm, his voice sharp with embarrassment. "Control yourself, Diana." But she shook him off, pointing at me again. "This is her fault. She always ruins everything. She's just—" Her words faltered, because at that moment the staff entered quietly through the side door. They bowed slightly, not to Diana, not to Victor, but to me. "Madam Lawson," the coordinator said softly, his voice carrying across the room. The guests turned. Diana blinked, her mouth opening, closing. Victor stiffened. And still, I did not speak. I left the key on the table, gleaming like a verdict, and walked slowly across the empty ballroom. My footsteps echoed against marble, each one louder than the accusations behind me. Respect is not negotiable. I had told her once, and tonight, without words, I told her again. The room remained empty, but in its silence, the truth had begun to fill every corner. The golden key still gleamed on the table when the doors at the far end of the ballroom opened again. A group of staff hurried in, their uniforms crisp, their expressions solemn. At the front was the hotel's general manager, a man who had known me for years. He bowed slightly, his voice steady and clear, carrying across the hollow room. "Good evening, Madam Lawson. Would you like us to begin setting the gala now?" The sound shattered the silence like a struck bell. Gasps spread through the crowd of guests. A few covered their mouths. Others stared at me with wide eyes, then back at Diana. Even Victor blinked, his usual charm faltering as confusion twisted across his face. The word "madam" echoed again and again, heavy with respect, undeniable. Diana froze. Her face drained of color, her hands clutched at the silk of her gown as though the fabric itself might anchor her. What did he just say?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I stood calmly, my silver handkerchief folded neatly in one hand. My eyes met the manager's, and I gave the faintest nod. "Not yet," I answered softly. Every gaze swung back to me. The ballroom seemed to shrink, the walls pressing closer, the air tightening. Diana's mouth opened, but no words came. For once, her voice failed her. Victor broke the silence first. "Wait, what is going on? Why are they calling you that?" He turned to the manager, his voice sharp, his mask of charm slipping. "Why address her like that?" The manager's tone remained calm. "Because she is Madame Lawson, sir, the owner of the Grand Sterling Hotel and of the Lawson Grand chain. All of this belongs to her." The sentence landed like thunder. Guests exchanged stunned glances, whispers rising in a frantic wave. "Owner? All of this? Her?" Diana staggered back a step. No, that's not possible," she stammered, her voice pitched high with disbelief. She clips coupons. She drives an old car. She's nothing." I lifted my hand, not to silence her but to steady myself. My heart beat calmly, each thud measured. I had waited years for this moment, but not for revenge, only for truth. "Diana," I said, my voice quiet but carrying through the room, "you told me I wasn't needed as a mother. You treated me as if I were only staff, a servant, a wallet. And yet—" I gestured around us, at the marble walls, the glittering chandeliers, the staff standing respectfully in the shadows. "All your life, you have leaned on what I built with these hands. The very stage you chose for your triumph tonight exists because of me." Her eyes filled with tears, though whether of shame or rage, I could not tell. "You said $60,000 was nothing," I continued, my voice firm now, the echo of years finally breaking free. "But every dollar came from nights I scrubbed these floors, from mornings I woke before dawn, from years of silence no one noticed. You may not need me as a mother, but everything you stand on has been shaped by my work, my sacrifice, my endurance." Victor swallowed hard, his gaze flickering between Diana and me. The arrogance had slipped from him, replaced with the unease of a man who realized he had miscalculated. The guests remained silent, hanging on every word. Even the chandeliers seemed to hum with stillness. I placed the handkerchief gently on the key, the two symbols of my life. One of quiet endurance, one of silent power, resting together. Then I lifted my eyes back to my daughter. "You thought I was invisible. But respect," I said slowly, "is not negotiable." Her lips parted, trembling, but no defense came. The smirk she had carried so easily was gone, replaced by the wide-eyed shock of someone who had finally seen the ground crumble beneath her feet. The manager bowed again, waiting for my instruction. "Madam, shall we begin setting the gala?" I let the silence linger, letting every guest feel the weight of it. Then I answered, softly but clearly, "Yes. Set the tables. Let them see what respect truly looks like. The staff moved at once, efficient and graceful, their every motion a reminder of the empire I had built. Diana sank into a chair, pale, her hands gripping the edge as though the world might tilt without warning. I did not gloat. I did not shout. I simply stood in the middle of the room I owned, in the life I had forged, and let the reversal settle like a tide. It took less than 24 hours for the whispers in that empty ballroom to turn into a storm. By morning, every social feed hummed with videos, photographs, and hashtags. Number sign crystal ball. Empty Room sat at the top of trending lists, accompanied by clips of Diana opening the grand doors to nothing but silence. Screens froze on her shocked face, her open mouth, her frantic pointing. Memes bloomed overnight, cruel in their creativity. Her friends, those who once circled her like moths to light, began to mock her online. Screenshots of her invitations were posted beside images of barren halls. "The gala with invisible guests," one wrote. Another added, "All that silk, no stage." Laughter spread faster than pity. Victor fared no better. His business associates began to distance themselves within hours. I overheard one conversation in the lobby when a potential investor called to cancel a meeting. "If he can't manage his own engagement gala," the man said flatly, "how could he manage a client's brand?" By evening, contracts were withdrawn, clients terminated partnerships, and Victor's carefully crafted image of success cracked like glass under pressure. For years, Diana had worshipped appearance. Now, appearance was her downfall. I sat in my quiet kitchen, the morning paper folded beside my tea. The silver handkerchief rested on the table, its thread glinting faintly in the light. My phone buzzed relentlessly, message after message flooding in. Some were from relatives, half shocked, half delighted. Others were from people I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly eager to reconnect. I ignored them all. Instead, I picked up the phone and dialed a number etched into my memory. Evelyn answered on the second ring, her voice steady as ever. "Margaret, I was expecting your call." Her calm steadied me. "The scandal has gone too far," I whispered. "Diana is being humiliated. Victor's reputation is collapsing. Should I do something?" There was a pause on the line, the sound of papers shuffling, then Evelyn's voice, firm but gentle. "No, this is not your storm to calm. You've carried them on your back long enough. Let the consequences land where they belong." I pressed the handkerchief between my fingers. "But she's still my daughter." "And you're still her mother," Evelyn replied. "But being a mother does not mean being a savior. Every choice has a cost. She treated you as staff, as invisible, as nothing. If you rush to clean up her mess now, you'll only prove her right. Respect is not negotiable, Margaret. You set the tables of your life. Don't hand them away again." Her words sliced clean through my doubt. I leaned back in my chair, hearing the weight of them settle into me. Diana called that afternoon. Her voice was frantic, layered with tears and fury. "Mom, you have to fix this. Everyone's talking about me, about us. Victor's losing clients. My friends are laughing behind my back. Do something, please." I listened, silent. She rattled on, demanding, begging, blaming. At last, when she paused to catch her breath, I spoke. "I cannot save you from the consequences of your own choices." The silence on her end was sharp, almost accusatory. "You've ruined me," she hissed, and then the line went dead. I sat still for a long time after, staring at the key Evelyn had once pressed into my palm, the symbol of everything I had endured. Outside, the world was loud with scandal, but inside, I felt an unfamiliar quiet, a quiet that belonged to me. That evening, Evelyn came by in person, her presence filling the room with calm authority. She set her briefcase down and studied me. "You're thinking of rescuing them still, aren't you?" I lowered my gaze. A mother doesn't stop worrying. "A mother also doesn't surrender her dignity," she said. "This is your chance to place boundaries, to show them that your silence is not weakness, but strength. If you step in now, Margaret, they'll never learn. Don't save them from themselves. Not this time." Her words echoed long after she left. I folded the handkerchief carefully, placed it in the drawer beside the golden key, and closed it. My choice was made. For years, I had allowed myself to be unseen, erased by the very people I had given everything to. Now, in the middle of their scandal, I chose not to disappear again, not to patch their cracks with my labor, not to hide their mistakes under my name. The world would see Diana and Victor for who they were, and they would have to face it without me shielding them. It was nearly dusk when the knock came at my door. 3 sharp raps, urgent, almost desperate. I opened it to find Diana standing there, her makeup streaked, her eyes red from crying. She pushed past me without waiting for an invitation, the way she always had, as though my home were nothing more than a waiting room for her moods. She collapsed onto the sofa, clutching a crumpled tissue. "Mother," she sobbed, "you humiliated me in front of the entire city. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Her voice cracked, pitched between accusation and despair. I closed the door quietly behind her and walked into the kitchen. The kettle was still warm from earlier. I set it back on the stove, lit the flame, and waited for the water to hum. She cried louder, her words tumbling out between gasps. "Everyone saw it." "They recorded it. My friends won't answer my calls. Victor is furious, and the internet won't stop, mocking me. Do you hate me so much you had to destroy me like this?" I said nothing. Instead, I reached for the porcelain teapot, the one with the faded blue roses that I'd owned since my wedding day. I measured out the tea leaves carefully, letting their earthy scent rise. Diana's sobs filled the silence, but I did not rush to fill it with excuses. "You made me a laughingstock," she cried, her voice muffled against her hands. "People will never forget this. I'll never live it down. Why, Mom? Why would you do this to me?" The kettle whistled softly, a sound both familiar and grounding. I poured the steaming water into the pot, watching the leaves swirl and unfurl. My movements were steady, precise, deliberate. Each step, each sound, was an anchor against the storm of her words. Carrying the tray back into the living room, I set it gently on the table between us. The cups clinked lightly, delicate against the weight of the moment. I poured her a cup first, as I always had, sliding it toward her. Then I poured my own, the amber liquid filling the space between silence and speech. She stared at me through tear-streaked lashes, waiting, expecting me to break, to apologize, to comfort. I lifted my cup and sipped, the warmth spreading through me. Still, I said nothing. Inside, my thoughts moved like currents beneath still water. How many times have I been silent? How many times have I swallowed words, smoothed conflicts, protected her from consequences? I had been silent when she called me staff at the family table, silent when she mocked my thrift in front of her friends, silent when she demanded $60,000 as though it were pocket change. Each silence had cost me a piece of myself. But tonight, this silence was different. This silence had weight. She slammed her tissue down. "You don't even care, do you? You just sit there, drinking tea, like none of this matters." I looked at her, really looked at her, the daughter I had raised with hands that once blistered from extra shifts, the daughter I had sheltered with my own body from storms both real and metaphorical. She was trembling, broken not by me, but by the truth finally standing in front of her. Still, I held my silence, because words could not teach her what silence now carried. I sipped my tea again, feeling the porcelain warm against my fingers. My eyes stayed steady on hers, calm, unwavering. For the first time, she faltered under my gaze. "Say something," she whispered, softer now, as though the force had drained out of her. "Please, just say something." But I did not, because sometimes a mother's greatest lesson is not spoken, it is lived. My silence has been mistaken for weakness all my life, I thought. But tonight, my silence is my strength. Tonight it is my boundary, my line, my truth. The clock ticked steadily on the wall, each second marking the distance between who I had been and who I had become. I set my cup down, gently, folded the silver handkerchief in my lap, and let the quiet fill the room until even her sobs had nothing left to cling to. When she finally rose to leave, her shoulders hunched and her steps unsteady, she did not receive the apology she sought. She received instead the silence of a mother who had given everything, and chosen, at last, to give no more. I didn't hear it from Diana first. The news reached me through whispers at the cafe I sometimes visited on quiet mornings. A woman at the next table leaned toward her friend, voice lowered but not enough to keep it from carrying. "They say Victor Hale is furious, blaming Diana for everything. Imagine turning on her like that, after all the spectacle." Later that evening, Diana herself came by, her face pale and lips pressed tight. She didn't step inside this time. She stood at the threshold, as though the weight of my silence from the night before still lingered in the air. "He said it was my fault," she admitted, her voice brittle. "Victor told me that if you hadn't ruined the gala, he would have closed a huge contract. He said I embarrassed him, that I let you destroy his chance." Her words trembled, but her eyes held something new. Doubt. I listened quietly, my hands folded around the silver handkerchief I had been ironing earlier, smoothing its worn edges as though it were silk. I didn't answer right away. I let her words echo between us, their sharpness finding their mark without me lifting a finger. She swallowed. "He said I should have controlled you better, that I should have kept you out of sight, like some liability." Her voice cracked on the last word. I felt no need to ask for details. I could picture it perfectly. Victor pacing in one of his tailored suits, his smile gone, his ambition laid bare. For so long, Diana had looked at him through rose-colored glass, admiring his drive, his charm, the way he talked about legacy and leverage. But glass can shatter quickly when struck by truth. "Did he really say that?" I asked softly, finally breaking the silence. She nodded, tears welling. "Yes, he doesn't care about me, does he? He only cared about the image, the contracts, the stage I held her gaze, calm and steady. For the first time in years, she didn't try to look away." "Sometimes," I said gently, "people show us who they are in moments of loss." That is when the mask slips. Diana sank onto the step, burying her face in her hands. "I thought he loved me. I thought he believed in me. He believed in what you could bring him," I replied. "There is a difference." Inside, I felt the familiar ache of motherhood, the urge to reach out, to gather her into my arms the way I once did when nightmares woke her at 3 a.m. But I stayed still. My silence, my calm, were not punishments. They were boundaries. Victor's selfishness illuminated the contrast. His anger was loud, self-serving, clawing for someone else to blame. My response was quiet, deliberate, and carried no blame at all, only truth. He shouted to protect his image. I stayed silent to protect my dignity. In that reflection, Diana saw the difference between ambition and wisdom, between noise and strength. She lifted her head slowly, her face streaked with tears. You didn't even say anything last night, and yet everyone was looking at you. They respected you, and all I did was shout and beg. Her confession trembled in the air, fragile as porcelain. For a moment, she was again that child in the supermarket aisle, looking up at me with awe, but adulthood complicated awe with shame, and I could see both wrestling in her expression. "What should I do?" she asked in a whisper, almost as if asking herself more than me. I placed the folded handkerchief on the table beside me, smoothing it once more. "You must decide whether you want a partner who sees you as a person or a pawn, and you must decide whether respect matters more to you than appearance." She wiped her eyes, her breath catching. "I don't know if I can face him again." "Then perhaps you already know your answer," I said. The porch light flickered above us, casting shifting shadows across her face. For the first time, I saw not arrogance, but vulnerability in her. And in that moment, Victor's true face had done what all my silence could not. It forced her to see the contrast between the man she admired and the mother she dismissed. As she rose to leave, she hesitated at the door. "You didn't raise your voice," she said softly, almost in wonder. "You didn't even fight." "But somehow you won," I didn't answer. I only closed the door gently after she left, the silver handkerchief resting on the table like a witness to all that had passed. The house was quiet that night, the kind of quiet that presses close and makes every clock tick sound like thunder. I couldn't sleep, so I moved through old drawers, searching not for anything in particular, but for something to steady my heart. In the bottom drawer of the cedar chest, beneath neatly folded linens, I found a small box I hadn't opened in years. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted the lid. Inside lay two things: my wedding ring, its gold dulled but still whole, and a folded letter yellowed by time. I slipped the ring onto my palm first, its familiar weight pressing against my skin. I had taken it off after Richard's funeral, not because I loved him less, but because I needed both hands free to hold our world together. For years, the ring had sat here, waiting. Tonight, it gleamed faintly in the lamplight, as if remembering. Beneath it, the letter rested, edges frayed. I recognized his handwriting instantly. Firm strokes, slightly slanted, the way he always wrote with purpose, even in the smallest notes. My throat tightened as I unfolded it. "Margaret," it began, "if the day ever comes when you feel overlooked or dismissed, remember this: you are the foundation. Nothing we have built, nothing Diana has known, would exist without your strength. People may forget, but that doesn't erase the truth. You are the heart of this family. Never let anyone tell you otherwise." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. I pressed the letter to my chest, the paper fragile but the message unshakable. It was as if Richard's voice traveled across the years, steadying me, reminding me that silence was not emptiness. Silence was structure, the kind that holds the roof above others even when they never look up to see it. I placed the ring beside the letter, the two anchors of my past, love and legacy, sitting together once more. My fingers traced the band, cool and familiar. I remembered the day he placed it on my hand, his vow simple but strong. "We'll build something together." We had. Only he never lived long enough to see how far I carried that promise. The letter's words rang in my mind. You are the foundation. I thought of Diana, her smirk in the ballroom, her sobs on my sofa, her voice cracking when Victor turned on her. She had forgotten my foundation, mistaking it for servitude. But Richard's letter reminded me that even unseen, my strength was the ground beneath her feet. I folded the letter carefully, kissed the edge as if to seal his voice back into it, and placed it inside the box. Then I slid the ring onto my finger again. It felt heavier than I remembered, as though carrying not just memory, but affirmation. For a long while, I sat in the lamplight, the handkerchief on one side of me, the ring on the other, the letter resting across my lap. 3 anchors of my life, each carrying a truth: endurance, love, and respect. My silence the night of the gala had been loud enough to shake the city, but Richard's words reminded me why I had chosen silence for so long. It was never because I was powerless. It was because I understood power did not need noise. As the clock struck midnight, I whispered softly into the empty room, as if he could hear me still. "You were right, Richard. I am the foundation, and foundations don't crumble. Not for storms, not for disdain. The letter, the ring, the handkerchief, the golden key, they were not just objects. They were witnesses to my journey. And now, they were proof that even when dismissed, I had always been more than enough." When I finally blew out the lamp and slipped into bed, the quiet felt different. Not heavy, not lonely. It felt like strength settled deep, like roots in the earth. I slept with the ring on my finger, Richard's words in my heart, and the certainty that the next chapter would not be about silence alone, but about boundaries spoken in action. The morning sun streamed through the cafe windows when I asked Diana to meet me. I chose that place deliberately, a quiet corner where the clinking of cups and the hum of strangers, conversations would soften the edges of what needed to be said. She arrived late, as always, her sunglasses covering the exhaustion in her eyes. Victor was nowhere in sight. She slid into the chair across from me, fidgeting with her phone before setting it face down on the table. "What's this about?" she asked, her tone brittle, defensive. I folded the silver handkerchief in my lap, took a breath, and looked directly at her. "This is about boundaries, Diana. I've been silent for too long. That ends today." Her eyes flickered, uneasy, but she didn't speak. "There are 5 conditions," I continued calmly. 5 boundaries you will honor if you want me in your life." I held up one finger. "First, respect. Not performative, not conditional. Genuine respect. You will not mock me in front of others. You will not call me staff or make jokes at my expense. I am your mother, not your servant." Her lips parted, a protest forming, but I lifted a second finger. "Second, you will not use me as a wallet. No more demands, no more treating my work and my money as something owed to you. If you want something, you will earn it. I will no longer fund disrespect." The cafe noise carried on around us, but I felt the space between us tighten, charged. "Third," I said, my voice steady, "you will never again reduce me to an employee in my own family. I raised you. I held this family together when there was nothing left. You may choose to forget that, but I will not allow you to erase it." Her hands clenched on the edge of the table. The bravado in her posture cracked, just slightly. "Fourth," I continued, "Victor will not control this family. I see through him, and deep down, I think you do too. If you choose him over your dignity, that is your decision, but I will not stand by and let him manipulate my legacy. He will not touch what I have built." Her eyes darted away, shame flickering across her face. She had never heard me speak so directly, never heard me place lines she could not cross. Finally, I raised my 5th finger. "Fifth, if you want a relationship with me, if you truly want to repair what is broken, you must seek help. Professional help. Therapy, counseling, something that forces you to confront the anger and entitlement that have poisoned our bond. Without that, we cannot heal. Tears welled in her eyes, but I did not soften my tone. For once, I let the weight of my words rest fully between us. She whispered, "You're giving me conditions? Like I'm a child?" I leaned forward slightly, my eyes unwavering. "No, Diana. I am giving you boundaries. Boundaries I should have set years ago. Boundaries that protect both of us. If you want me in your life, these are not optional. They are necessary." Her tears spilled over, streaking down her cheeks. "What if I can't meet them?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Then you will live without me," I said softly but firmly. Because ton trong, respect, is not a choice. It is not something you get to negotiate. It is non-negotiable. The words landed between us like a gavel. She flinched, not from cruelty, but from truth. For a long while, she said nothing. The cafe buzzed with life around us, cups clinking, doors opening, laughter rising. But at our table, silence reigned. I sipped my tea slowly, calmly, letting her feel the full weight of everything I had spoken. Finally, she nodded, small and uncertain, like a child again. "I don't know if I can do all of that right away," she whispered. "But I don't want to lose you." I folded the handkerchief once more, placed it gently in my bag, and rose from the table. "Then start with respect, Diana. The rest will follow." I left her there, sitting with her tears and her choices. For the first time, I walked away not as her servant, not as her silent provider, but as her mother, whole, steady, and unmovable. Diana didn't answer me. She simply gathered her bag, her movements stiff, her face clouded with emotions she couldn't quite name. She rose from the cafe chair, pushed it back with a scrape, and walked out without a word. The door swung shut behind her, leaving only the faint jingle of the bell and the echo of her absence. I didn't chase her. For the first time in years, I felt no need. That afternoon, I returned home and made my way into the garden. The roses were in bloom, their deep crimson petals heavy with dew, their fragrance wrapping around me like an old memory. I fetched my pruning shears, their handles cool in my palm, and sank slowly onto the wooden bench by the trellis. The world felt quieter here, removed from scandal, from noise, from the brittle tension of my daughter's voice. I began to cut, gently, deliberately, one thorny branch at a time. Each snip echoed softly, a rhythm steady enough to match my breathing. As I worked, I let my mind slow with the motion. This was my pivot, my moment of pause, the space between who I had been and who I was now becoming. The roses reminded me of my own life. Years of growth, years of thorns, years of beauty that too often went unnoticed. I had pruned them every season, not for myself, but for others to admire. Tonight, I trimmed them for me. I let my eyes wander across the garden. Richard had built the trellis with his own hands, a simple frame of wood that had weathered sun and storm. I remembered him hammering the nails, sweat beading on his brow, and telling me that roses needed support to climb. "Even the strongest stems lean on something," he'd said. Now, years later, I realized I had been that trellis for my family, the quiet strength that no one applauded, but without which nothing would have flourished. As the shears clicked, I thought of Diana's silence at the cafe. Perhaps it was anger, perhaps it was shame, or perhaps it was the beginning of reflection. I could not know. What I did know was this: her silence no longer defined me. For too long, I had let her treatment dictate my worth. I had allowed her dismissive words, staff, servant, burden, to shape the way I saw myself. But as I cut away the dead branches, letting them fall to the ground, I understood that those words belonged to her, not me. One rose leaned heavy on the trellis, its stem thick but crooked. I trimmed carefully, guiding it upward, and whispered into the quiet air, "My daughter may turn her back on me, but I have finally turned back to myself." The words surprised me. They rose from somewhere deep, a place I had hidden beneath years of silence. They felt steady, undeniable, like roots breaking through soil. The sun slipped lower in the sky, painting the garden in amber light. The roses glowed, their petals catching fire in the last warmth of day. I sat there for a long time, shears resting on my lap, breathing in the scent of earth and blossoms. The stillness was not loneliness, it was peace. A mother's heart never stops hoping. I knew that. Even as I set boundaries, even as I reclaimed my dignity, a part of me still longed for Diana to find her way back. But hope no longer chained me to her choices. Hope was simply a light I carried, whether she stepped into it or not. The roses did not ask who noticed them. They bloomed because that was their nature. And I realized with a quiet clarity that so did I. When I finally rose from the bench, I carried the trimmed branches to the compost pile, shaking the petals into the earth. The garden would grow stronger for it, just as I had grown stronger for all I had endured. The night came softly, the air cooling around me. I walked back into the house, leaving the roses to rest under the stars. For the first time in a long while, I felt whole. The news broke on a Wednesday morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table, a pot of tea steeping beside me, when the radio announcer's voice carried across the room. Victor Hale, the young entrepreneur once celebrated for his fast rise in the consulting world, now faces allegations of fraud. Multiple contracts have been terminated following reports of falsified documents and inflated numbers. Authorities have opened an investigation. I turned the volume down, the silver handkerchief resting beneath my fingertips. I wasn't surprised. I had watched Victor closely from the beginning, seen the cracks beneath the polish, the way his smile lingered just a little too long when money was involved, the way he measured every person by their utility, not their humanity. By noon, the scandal had spilled across every platform. Clients withdrew public support, colleagues distanced themselves, and former associates came forward with stories of manipulation and lies. The man who had built his reputation on image now found himself dismantled by truth. That evening, Diana appeared at my door. She looked different, not the glamorous daughter in silk and diamonds, but a woman stripped of certainty. Her eyes were ringed with exhaustion, her posture sagging under the weight of realization. "He lied to me," she whispered as soon as I opened the door. "All those contracts, all those promises, he built them on sand. They're saying he forged documents, that he used me to look legitimate. Mom, I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it." I stepped aside and let her in. She sank into the sofa, her shoulders trembling. For once, she didn't try to fill the silence with excuses or complaints. She sat there, face in her hands, and let the truth press against her until she could no longer hold it back. "I defended him," she said, her voice breaking. "I stood by him when people doubted. I told myself he was ambitious, not selfish. And now—" She trailed off, unable to finish. I poured her tea, sliding the cup gently across the table. "The truth," I said softly, "has a way of revealing itself. No matter how carefully someone hides it, no matter how many masks they wear, truth waits. And when it comes, it does not need our permission." She lifted her head, her eyes wet. "You knew, didn't you? You always knew what he was." I didn't gloat. I didn't say I told you so. Instead, I sighed, the sound deep, weary, but calm. "I suspected, but knowing and saying are not the same. You had to see it for yourself. Her fingers traced the rim of the teacup, trembling. I thought he loved me. I thought he believed in me. He believed in what you could give him, I replied. The image, the access, the illusion of respectability. Love and use are not the same, Diana. She closed her eyes, the truth cutting sharper than any blade. For the first time, she seemed to grasp the difference between the noise of ambition and the quiet of integrity. I sat across from her, the golden key and Richard's letter tucked safely in the drawer beside me, silent witnesses to this moment. I felt no triumph, no satisfaction in Victor's fall, only a deep sigh of inevitability. Su thatko kachtu foi be, I murmured under my breath. The truth has a way of revealing itself. Diana looked at me, confusion flickering at the foreign words, but she seemed to understand anyway. She wrapped her arms around herself, her voice smaller now. What do I do, Mom? Everyone knows. Everyone's talking. I feel like I don't even know who I am anymore. I studied her face, the fear, the shame, the crumbling pride. For years, she had lived on surfaces, mistaking shine for strength. Now, stripped of both Victor's facade and her own illusions, she was left with something raw, something honest. You begin again, I said simply, not with image, not with contracts, with yourself. That's where truth starts. She lowered her gaze, silent, but I could see something shifting inside her. Perhaps it was the first crack of humility, perhaps the first seed of change. Outside, the roses rustled in the evening wind, their thorns sharp, their blossoms still opening despite the season's turn. I thought of them as I sat there, watching my daughter confront the ruin of what she had chosen. Victor's collapse was loud, public, humiliating, but my lesson to her was quiet, private, steady. Strength did not need spectacle. Truth did not need applause. When she left later that night, her steps were slower, her face pale, her phone heavy in her pocket. I closed the door gently, leaned against it, and exhaled. The truth had done its work. It was early morning when I heard the knock. Not the sharp, hurried knock of someone demanding to be let in, but a hesitant, uneven rhythm that spoke of exhaustion. I opened the door and found Diana standing there. Her face was pale, the makeup gone, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look far younger and far more fragile than she had in years. She clutched a folded piece of paper in her hands. "Mom," she said, her voice hoarse, I'm here because I can't keep going like this." She held out the paper. I unfolded it slowly. It was an application form for therapy, sessions with a counselor in the city. Her signature was already at the bottom. "I was wrong," she whispered, eyes downcast. "I treated you like someone who owed me everything. Like I was entitled to your sacrifice, your money, your silence. But I see now how much I've lost by doing that. I don't even know who I am anymore, and I need to learn how to be human again." Her words trembled in the quiet space between us. I studied her face, the dark circles under her eyes, the way her hands shook as she pressed the paper into mine. This was not the proud, defiant daughter who had mocked me in hotel ballrooms or dismissed me at family dinners. This was someone stripped bare, standing on the edge of her own undoing, asking for a rope. I felt the ache in my chest, sharp and tender. The mother in me longed to pull her close, to assure her that everything would be all right. But the woman in me, the one who had learned to build boundaries, the one Richard had reminded was the foundation, knew that her words had to be more than apology. They had to be a beginning. "Look at me, Diana," I said softly. She lifted her gaze, slowly, as if afraid of what she might find in my eyes. What I saw there was not arrogance, not entitlement, but pain. Pain, and something small but unmistakable: hope. You've taken the first step, I told her. But the road is long. Therapy is not a cure-all. Respect is not a signature on a form. It's a practice, day after day. And I cannot walk that road for you. Tears welled in her eyes. I know. But I want to try. I don't want to keep hurting you. I don't want to keep hurting myself. I reached for the paper again, smoothing its creases with my hand. It felt fragile, like her, but also like a promise. This, I said, is a start, and starts matter. For a long moment, we simply sat there in silence. I let her words sink into the room, let her vulnerability stand without rushing to fill it. The silence was not a weapon this time. It was space. Space for her to breathe, to be, to begin. She broke it first. Do you hate me for all I've done? The question cut deep, but I answered honestly. No, hate is not what I carry. Hurt, yes. Disappointment, yes. But not hate. I could never hate you. You are my daughter. My heart may be bruised, but it has not hardened against you. Her shoulders shook as she began to cry, the sound raw and unguarded. I let her cry, and after a while, I reached out and placed the silver handkerchief into her hand. Here, I said quietly. Even the strongest needs something to hold on to. She pressed it to her face, clutching it as though it were more than cloth. Perhaps it was. Perhaps it was proof that despite everything, there was still something unbroken between us. When she finally calmed, she whispered, "Do you believe I can change?" I held her gaze, steady and unflinching. Yes, but only if you believe it too. This paper is not for me, Diana. It's for you. The morning light streamed in through the window, casting a glow across her weary face. For the first time in years, I felt something stir in me. Not the blind hope of a mother who excuses everything, but the cautious hope of a woman who knows healing is possible if the work is done. I didn't say we were healed. I didn't say all was forgiven. I simply said, let's see where this takes you. And in her eyes, through the tears, I saw a flicker of something I hadn't seen since she was a little girl, clutching my hand in the supermarket aisle. The reflection of a daughter who still wanted to find her way home. The table was small, tucked in the corner of my kitchen, nothing like the glittering banquets Diana once insisted upon. Just 3 place settings: a roast chicken, some roasted vegetables, and a loaf of bread warm from the oven. Simple food, honest food. Evelyn arrived first, her presence steady as always, carrying a bottle of wine she said was modest but reliable. She smiled when she saw the table. "This feels right," she said. "No chandeliers, no noise." Just people. Diana came last. She looked nervous, carrying a dish she had made herself. Potatoes, unevenly sliced, some burnt at the edges, others too soft. She placed it on the table awkwardly. "It's not perfect," she admitted, cheeks flushed. I looked at the dish, then at her. Years ago, she would have scoffed at imperfection, hiding it under bravado. Tonight, she offered it plainly, without armor. That, more than the food, felt like change. We sat together, the 3 of us. Evelyn poured the wine, Diana fidgeted with her fork, and I carved the chicken. For a while, there was silence, broken only by the clink of utensils and the hum of the refrigerator. It wasn't an easy silence, but it wasn't hostile either. It was the silence of people learning how to sit with one another again. Diana spoke first. "I don't remember the last time I helped with a meal like this," she said quietly. "Victor always wanted things catered. Always wanted the show. I forgot what simple food even tasted like. Evelyn smiled kindly. Sometimes simple is where healing begins. I passed her the bread, then looked at Diana. Her hands trembled slightly as she spooned vegetables onto her plate. I could see how unfamiliar she was with this setting, how much she was trying. Halfway through the meal, she set her fork down and met my eyes. "Mom," she said, her voice unsteady, "I don't expect you to forget what I've done. I don't even expect you to forgive me yet, but I want you to know I hear you now, really hear you." Her words hung in the air. I let them sit, taking a slow sip of wine before answering. "Diana," I said softly but firmly, "respect is not negotiable." Her breath caught. I saw the recognition in her face, the memory of the night I said those words in the cafe, the way they had landed like a verdict. But this time was different. She didn't flinch. She didn't argue. She nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "I understand now." The weight of those words pressed into me, not as victory, but as release. For years, I had carried the burden of being unseen, unheard, dismissed. Tonight, for the first time, my daughter acknowledged what I had always known. Respect was not a gift to be begged for. It was a boundary, a truth, a right. Evelyn raised her glass gently. "To respect," she said. We clinked glasses, not ceremoniously, not for show, but quietly, almost tenderly. The meal went on. Diana's potatoes were too salty, the bread slightly overbaked, and the chicken a little dry. Yet it was one of the most meaningful dinners of my life. Because it was not about perfection. It was about presence. About 3 women, 1 mother, 1 daughter, 1 friend, sharing food and trying to rebuild something that had nearly been lost. At the end, Diana stood to clear the plates. I let her. Watching her gather the dishes, I saw not the polished young woman who had once demanded galas, but someone stumbling, learning, trying again. And that was enough. As we said goodnight, she lingered at the door. "Thank you for letting me come," she said softly. I touched her cheek, just for a moment. "Thank you for showing up," I replied. The night closed around us, but inside me, a small light glowed. It wasn't certainty. It wasn't full forgiveness. But it was a beginning, built on the truth Richard once wrote to me, built on the boundary I had finally spoken aloud. Respect is not negotiable. And this time, my daughter nodded. Night settled over the city like a shawl pulled tight against the chill. I sat by the window with a mug of peppermint tea warming my hands. The steam lifted in a thin ribbon that smelled like clean air after rain. Inside my house, the clocks kept honest time, and the rooms exhaled. I placed the silver handkerchief on my knee and smoothed its threadbare edge. It has traveled with me through hospitals, boardrooms, and empty ballrooms. It has caught tears I would not show, and words I chose not to speak. Tonight, it felt lighter, as if it had been carrying my restraint, and at last it could rest. On the table nearby lay the golden key. It shone without boasting, a quiet sun in the lamplight. I thought of the night it kissed wood in the empty hall, the way the sound rolled out like a verdict. I did not need to raise my voice. A key and a silence told the story better than speeches ever could. I sipped the mint and let the warmth settle behind my ribs. Boundaries, I reminded myself, are not walls against love. They are doors that require a handle. Tonight I chose the handle and turned it toward myself. The room answered with steadiness I had waited years to feel. Diana had come back this morning with her therapy form signed, and her pride set down like luggage. She shook in the doorway. She did not ask for money. She asked for room. I gave her that, not an inch more, not an inch less. Evelyn sent a message that read only, "Keep your lines clear." Victor's fall continued without my commentary. Headlines stacked on headlines, contracts dissolved, An inquiry opened. I felt no triumph, relief, a quiet yes to health. I lifted the handkerchief and pressed it to my mouth. In a voice only the window could hear, I said, "I have stood up, without noise." The words did not echo. They settled. Richard's ring warmed on my finger as if answering. I imagined him at the trellis, reminding me that even the most stubborn rose can learn a new direction with a careful tie. I turned the key over in my palm and studied the scratches that years had given it. Power, when it is honest, is never spotless. Mine opened 3 rooms I had avoided. The first was dignity. I walked in and recognized the furniture. The second was grief. I dusted what I needed and left the rest to sunlight. The third was choice. I sat there the longest, then left the door ajar. My phone buzzed once. Diana again. A simple text. Session 1 completed. I told the truth. I typed back, "Keep going. Respect begins with you." I set the phone face down and let silence hold us both. The tea cooled. I rose, refilled the kettle, and watched the thin stream glimmer as it met the mug. The small things matter. Boiled water, clean sheets, names spoken with care. If anyone asked me what saves a life, I would answer, 1,000 steady gestures. And when those fail, 1 firm boundary. I thought of the people who will hear this story and see their own kitchens, their own bruised silences, their own daughters or mothers or partners who forgot their worth. If you have been dismissed by those who should have cherished you, tell me this. Will you choose a quiet that erases you, or will you choose the quiet that restores you? Tell me in the comments what standing up looks like in your life. Tell me what respect must mean for you. I blew across the tea. Mint and heat met my tongue. I was not a heroine tonight. I was a woman who finally treated herself with the care she once reserved for everyone else. That felt like enough. Tomorrow, I will deadhead the roses and answer no questions I do not wish to answer. I will meet my daughter for coffee and listen more than I speak, but I will leave if she forgets the first condition. The house darkened. I clicked off the lamp, and the window became a mirror, returning me to myself. On the table, the golden key caught the last thin line of streetlight and held it, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Power can be quiet. Justice can enter a room without shoes. Respect is not negotiable. I set the key gently at the center of the table and folded the silver handkerchief beside it. The kettle sighed as it cooled. A train whispered to the tracks, and the city answered. I stood, finished my tea, and let the frame linger for anyone who needed it. A window, a woman, and a key waiting in the dark, bright enough to find on the next morning.